So Sandra Palomar is currently the chair of the Department of Fine Arts at the Foundation University in Dumaguete City, Negros Oriental. She was the former director of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila and faculty at the College of St. Benilde Arts Management Program. She co-founded Fotomoto, PH, and supports the creative industries through independent studios and nonprofit organizations she set up in France and the Philippines. So please welcome Ms. Sandra Palomar.
Thank you, bots. Thank you, dear audience, for being many tonight to listen to us talk about why print is not dead. Okay? Let's get over that hang-up. But before anything else, let me introduce Fotomoto PH, who is the partner of Art Fair Philippines for the photography section in this year's fair. Who is Fotomoto? Do we know who they are? Next slide, please. Or do I do this? Oh, there. Okay. We are 11 in Fotomoto who are photographers, curators, writers, artists. And in the booth right now, there are at least 9 of the founders who have their photographs or artworks. You can visit them at your own leisure. In this picture, we are missing Paco Guerrero and Wawi, who is with us today. Where are you, Wawi? Thank you for joining us. Wala. Okay. Busy, busy. Now, short story is we've forgotten the pandemic. And it helped to actually get out of it in November 2021 by occupying most of them restaurants, but public spaces with photographs of at least 267 exhibiting artists. And since November 2021, in those public spaces in Manila, we have exhibited in Baguio, in Bacolod, in many parts of Manila, like the UP College of Fine Arts and other institutions and commercial spaces. What is Fotomoto's main program? The open call. So this open call was quickly put together in 1 month in October of 2021, and we had an exhibition in November 2021. And then the theme was portraits for 2021. And then the year after, in 2022, we announced a new theme, which is home. This year, we are going to announce the 3rd open call on Sunday. So you will know only then. And we will be opening the call to everyone to begin, to all photographers or non-photographers, enthusiasts, to send in their photographs by April for an exhibition in November. We have other programs, such as the Atelier, and that happened during the 10 days of the fair at the Greenbelt Cinema, in Shutter Space, and at Tarsier Pictures. There was a talk, there was a demonstration, and of course, apart from that, we have also public exhibitions in the Greenbelt. We also do photo walks. During the exhibitions that we bring outside of Manila, our founders conduct these walks. It will be a way, and this is what we plan to do, no? To reach out to camera groups, because we want to include more photographers who are outside of the capital. And then what a lot of photographers wait for are the portfolio reviews. Because of the many practicing photographers we have, other photographers look for feedback. So these portfolio reviews are among the activities that we put together, including the exhibition. Okay, I think that's the end of my presentation for Fotomoto PH. I will now turn the mic over to our intern from Benilde Arts Management, Ralph, to assist me.
Once again, thank you, Ms. Sandra, for giving us a background on who make up Fotomoto and its shared goals with Art Fair Philippines. So once again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your presence in this talk entitled Print is Dead, Long Live Print, a discussion on approaches to funding, digitizing, archiving, preserving, presenting, and publishing photographs from a local and international perspective. So tonight, we are delighted to have three accomplished individuals in the field of fine art photography, magazine, and art and book design publishing. Our panelists will discuss how their experiences and expertise intersect in the sphere of photography. So, who will flash the screen? Before we begin, allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists for tonight, beginning with Mr. Neal Oshima, who is a fine art, commercial, and editorial photographer based in Manila. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay. Yes. He has worked with numerous major brands and has won multiple awards internationally. His photographs are published in over 50 books and are included in several museum collections. He is a co-founder of Fotomoto PH, with some works presented at the photography section at the art fair. So you guys can check him out. And moving on to our second speaker, Mr. Nachi Ugarte is a creative director. Yes, please give a round of applause. Yes. Yeah. Mr. Nachi Ugarte is a creative director who has produced award-winning work for global brands like Coca-Cola, Sony, and others. And currently, he is the co-founder of Grid Magazine, and he is also the creative director of the magazine and digital newsroom, The Independent Investor. Now, with our final speaker, Japanese art book publisher and designer, Hikari Machiguchi. He is currently the art director of Bookshop M based in Japan, a photo book publication established in 2005 under the creative design studio Match & Company. He will tell us how he got started in the art book industry in Japan. So by now, I'm sure the audience must be very excited to hear our panelists share their expertise and insights with us on the provocative topic of tonight's evening. There is life after a print, and it is more print. Yes. So moving forward, let's please welcome Mr. Neal Oshima for his presentation revolving around book projects that he has edited and have his photographs published in them.
Neal, this whole thing makes me extremely nervous. I usually have to have a couple beers. So I might ramble a little bit, and I don't really like talking about work. I just think work should just be seen. But anyway, here we go. I was born in New York, grew up in West Coast and in Honolulu. I went to graduate school in photography in San Francisco and UCLA, and ended up out here. My father was an economist, and he was teaching at the UP Diliman. He was with the Rockefeller Foundation. So after I graduated, he said, hey, come out. I ended up staying. I set up a photo studio with a couple local photographers, and I set up several photography studios. And I did a lot of work, like shot like Coca-Cola and Levi's and all that stuff. And at one point, I started to do books. The first book I did was Philippine Ancestral Houses, which was it was a GCF book. It was Hilda Cordero Fernando, a really great lady, a writer, and she would mortgage her house to do a book every couple years. And this was the book I did with her. It was the first book I did here. I had just come out of graduate school. I didn't study commercial photography. I studied art photography. And I had never done a book before. I wasn't really an architectural photographer. I just used 35 millimeter to shoot. And I'll just run through. I have about 12 books that I thought of the 50 odd books that I've done were sort of more important books. And they're all commissioned books. They weren't like, they're not art books. They're really very applied. And on a lot of them, I wasn't the editor, I was just the photographer. Some of them I was the creative director, but a lot of them I was just the photographer. But making books was a great opportunity. And I think I was really lucky to come here because the Philippines has just got such diversity in terms of environments, culture, languages, you know, people, landscapes. And it was just amazing to do books. I love doing books because they're really immersive. You get into like an idea and you can expand the idea and it influences your photography. So this was done quite a while ago. A lot of these houses are gone. And I think that's one of the important things about the book is that it's, we've documented buildings that no longer exist. I was in Taal town and people came up to me and they said, oh, you know, you're the one that did that ancestral houses. And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we use it to help restore the city, to trying to make it what it was. I just shot with a 35 millimeter camera. Another book that I did that was, I feel is important was the Subli. So this is, you know, books, you do a book and you don't know like, is it gonna have any impact? Is anyone gonna look at it? You know, so this was a book about a dance form in Batangas. And it was the PhD thesis of Elena Morano. And she had created a way of notating the dance. And it's an interesting dance because it's quite syncretic. It integrates like traditional Batangas mythology and culture and integrates it with Catholicism and also sort of like a weird cowboy kind of ethic. So I went there, this is a cover, and I met this troupe of dancers that were like all in their 60s and 70s. They pair for life, even though they're not married to each other, they just happen to dance well together. And it's almost a square dance form. And it has like kind of a mix of kind of a Philippine motifs and almost cowboy stuff. They were great. They danced all night, these people, every single dance from like 9 o'clock to morning. And then the following morning, I photographed them in the sunlight outside of the, they were up for like 24 hours or 36 hours. The interesting thing about the book was I was in the town of in Batangas City, and someone came up and said, hey, are you the guy that did the photos for that book? And I said, yeah. And they said, we'd like to like invite you to lunch. And I went like, why? And they said, well, you know, now the Subli is practiced, taught in all levels of the public school system in Batangas, from first grade to high school. And I said, you know, there were only 1,000 copies of that book, and I only have one. How do you use the book? And they said, we Xerox it. And they showed me a Xerox. It was like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox. And they used that for the dance. At one point, I met Doreen Fernandez, who was like the food writer in the Philippines. She's a great lady. She's no longer with us, but she really pioneered she really promoted Philippine food. Like when nobody cared about it, nobody, I used to meet with her in openings and stuff, and she'd say, "Oh, have you tried the bulanglang from Pampanga, or have you gone to that marketplace above the airport in Ilocos?" And so we would exchange information about food, and she got me into photographing food in situ all over the Philippines, and I started documenting it kind of early on. So I've been doing that for a while. Baguio Market. All this was done in film. This is a book I did, another food book. Friends of mine have a restaurant in, I guess it's in Brooklyn now, called Purple Yam. But originally the restaurant was called Cendrillon, and it was downtown New York. It's a good restaurant. And it wasn't explicitly Filipino, but it was, a lot of the influences were Filipino. The chef was Romy Dorotan. And it was one of the first Philippine food books. I think it was the first Philippine to be picked up by a major international publisher, which was Stuart Tabori Chang. And it won a ICP award, the International Association of Culinary Professionals, for the presentation in the book. Took us years to do. Went all around shooting. I was amazed, the designer, who was a French woman, picked out this photo of a woman cooking in I think it was in Lukban or something, as the cover shot. But it's gone into like 3 or 4 printings, and I really enjoy shooting food. These are some of Romy's dishes. Pampanga. Purple Yam. Another food book. This one is an area book. It was, I was commissioned by the governor of Ilocos Sur to do a book on their cuisine. So I went to every town in Ilocos Sur. I think it's like 20 or 30 towns. This is a book I did with Clinton Palanca. Sort of the air of Doreen Fernandez as far as food writing is concerned. And it was, my Angkang's noodles refers to the dish that when a woman marries into a family, she has to produce a dish of noodles that she presents to the grandfather or the patriarch of the family. And she has to practice it so that it conforms to like the family's recipes and everything. And that allows her to be accepted into the family. It's my daughter on the cover. And this is one of the more recent food books I've done. It's about the food from Batanes. So it's kind of the way food books have evolved, where they deal with the ecology and community and sustainability. These people go out on these small boats and they catch very large fish, dorado, in extremely rough waters. And they're Austronesians. So Austronesians are the Filipinos that came from Batanes and the islands in the north, and they sailed across the Pacific to Easter Island and Hawaii and New Zealand and became the Polynesians. So linguistically, and genetically, they're contiguous. It's really a beautiful area. This is a book on the Tiboli weavers of Lake Cebu in Mindanao. And it's also I love weaving, I love weavers. So we were in, I was shooting a book in Mindanao, and these weavers approached us and asked us if we could do a book on their weaving. And we asked them why, and they said, well, it's being bastardized because we're asked to weave for, handicraft manufacturers and interior decorators. And they said that a real tinalak, which is their traditional weave, can only be what you dreamt or your grandmother taught you. And so they wanted us to do a book to kind of emphasize that. It's backstrap weaving. It's ikat. And we photographed the weavings of the 10 best weavers in the tribe. I also did a lot of fashion. I like doing fashion. But this is an interesting project. It's like how a book can come out of almost nowhere. I knew Sandy and Mark, and I knew their mother, who was a fashion designer in the Philippines in the 60s, 70s, 80s, I think. Slim Higgins. And the kids, she had died, and she had been dead for a while, and her kids wanted to do a book to commemorate her. They said she wasn't a great mother, but they really respected her as an artist. And they had all of her garments, and her sisters had kept all of the embroidery patterns and everything. And so we did a book based on her fashion. This is a book I did on the squatter settlements, the architecture of the squatter settlements. So it's not an art book, it's really about, it was practical. We wanted to see how people lived in the squatter settlements and how space was used and how sustainable it was. So I worked in about 10 different settlements, informal settlements around Manila. This is another interesting book because I was commissioned to do a book on Puerto Princesa in Palawan, and my writer got blocked, and he was extremely busy doing a lot of things at work, and so I didn't have a text, so we decided to do just a picture book. But it has a narrative. And this is the last one. This is a book I did for the Aichi Expo, for the Philippine booth. It was a small book. They said, can you do a book about things that interest, places and things that interest you personally in the Philippines? So I thought it should be nonverbal, so it's just photographs. And I just looked through my archives and found images that I thought would be interesting to people. And I showed on a map where each one was photographed. And I did this about almost 20 years ago. And I want to do a second edition of it, so if anyone wants to finance a book, please contact me. The books are up here, so maybe afterwards, if anyone wants to look at them, it's all here.
Once again, thank you, Sir Neal, for sharing with us your formidable book projects. And it is truly great to see our vibrant and diverse cultures showcased so beautifully through print. So now, we would like to invite Mr. Nachi Ugarte to talk about how writing, design, and a good story play a big part in promoting photography and boosting the magazine industry.
I'm going to be talking a little bit, I guess, about the commercial side of design. A lot of the art books that are being shown here, I really, in what I enjoy, is I like art or design in the service of commerce, which may be sacrilegious to a lot of artists, but that's kind of what I like. I like branding, I like logos, I like doing stuff for posters and anything that has a purpose, that's what I enjoy. And magazines are kind of the lesser stepchild of photo books. They're the things you get, you read it, and you throw it away. We started Grid 10 years ago, and we wanted to sort of kind of elevate it, or really we wanted to do what we enjoyed. When we started Grid 10 years ago, a lot of the founders lived abroad. We just moved back to the Philippines, and we wanted to explore the Philippines, and we wanted clients to pay for it. So that was our excuse to come up with a travel publication. So me, one of the Fotomoto founders, Paco Guerrero, a wonderful writer, Christine Fonacher, a wonderful photographer, Sunny Takur, Miguel Nashanseno, we all put together this magazine. This was the first issue of Grid, and at the time, most magazines, especially travel magazines, were done in a very sort of list kind of ways. When you go here, go to this restaurant, check into this hotel, and most people don't travel that way. We don't, I mean, at least the way I travel, I don't remember the museum or the places that I remember the little details and the little stories that you get along the way. So I kind of wanted to show a little bit of what we did, show why I love print, why I think it will continue, and what that evolution might be. This is the very first story we ever did for Grid. It was done by a wonderful photographer, Sunny Takur. He spent 5 days with the cowboys of Masbate. They have a rodeo there, and he really was embedded with them. And Christine Fonacher kind of interviewed him and talked about his experiences. He lived with one of the cowboys named Bawang. And his experience with the cowboys of Masbate was what sort of gave life to this story. Now, in a typical situation, cowboys in the Philippines, there's almost a joke to it. You kind of want to treat it as like this funny kind of Filipinos dressed as cowboys and trivialize it in a way. The way they did it is they were able to grab something about the cowboys that was much more interesting. There was a certain dignity that they represented. And Christine Fonacher wrote it in such a wonderful way. I want to share a lot of the writing because I'm the art director. I've got the easy job. I just put everything together. So I work with wonderful photographers, wonderful writers. I just put it all together. And to me, that is kind of the beauty of magazines. It puts everything together, and hopefully I choose the right design to tell that story. And I'll get a bit more into that later on. But Christine ended the story with this line. We're here, meaning in Masbate, we're here because even if we've never ridden a horse, let alone broken a wild bronco, we're welcome to borrow the dignity of the act. We're here because we feel a little taller in our boots, a little prouder of who we are. At the rodeo, we are all honest men. And it was a wonderful way of telling the story of the cowboys. It was about dignity. It was about manliness that was kind of lost. It was about the Filipino man and the responsibility they have, and she embedded that into the story of these cowboys. One of the lines, if you can read it there, is, on an ordinary day, in an ordinary place, this would all be very funny. And it is. People dress up as cowboys with cowboy boots. Part of the rules of the Masbate rodeo is you have to dress as a cowboy, which could be silly, but in the end, it becomes something very dignified. It becomes there's a certain pride to it. This was our second issue of Grid. And one of the things we wanted to do with Grid was right away get away from the idea of celebrities on the cover. We put celebrities, but what we thought were celebrities. This story was about the water breather. This is an imam from Samar. He was a deep diver. And the story again was about the deep divers of Samar, and it talks about how they would break deep diving records, not because it was a sport, not because they wanted to, because they had to. They had to dive for pearls. They had to do it to make a living. And the story about the water breather was about an Austrian deep diver who came to the Philippines to study them, to find out how they were capable of staying underwater for so long. Again, a quote from, Christine Fonacher. His pre-dive ritual was very quick. On the boat, he leans over the side, takes a handful of water over his face. Still in the boat, he puts his face into the water first, as if he were trading in his lungs for gills. And then Elidio, the imam of the Sagrada Seaside, plunges into the cold blue water world. This was the spread. You'll notice a lot of my spreads. I'm a huge movie fan, and I would get into a lot of fights with the writers because I would change their headlines. And I always wanted the headlines. I always wanted the opening spread to feel like a movie poster. I wanted people to come in and read it and get excited about it. And to me, that's the beauty of what magazines can do. So a big bulk of the story was sort of this unusual friendship between this Austrian free diver and the imam of the community. They became very close friends and kept touch many years later on. One of the best things about Grid was getting to meet people I never would meet in my regular life. We got to meet people from all walks of the Philippines, and it was just, to me, it was just wonderful. Fifth issue of Grid was called the Fringe issue, where we explored sort of things outside the norm in the Philippines. This was, I don't know if you know, there's a Philippine Wrestling Association. There's a huge following. They take it very seriously. And we did a story about them and community. But one of my favorite stories in there was Strange Brew. This was done by Bea Misa. Bea Misa traveled to Siquijor. Now, Siquijor is already a pretty weird place, but she went during Holy Week. Holy Week is when all the manghuhulas, all the spiritual healers, all of them gather in Siquijor because that is when whatever potion you make is the most potent. So she went there right during Holy Week, something I would never do, and hung around with these spiritual healers. She got to meet a lot of these healers, talk up to them about their profession. And again, it's a very easy thing to ridicule, but she took it very seriously, understood their side, and understood that way of life. Talking about the previous spiritual healer, he removes his shirt, revealing a fully tattooed torso. He explains that as he learned them, he had oraciones inked on his body every Friday for 4 years. These tattoos protect him. They keep him safe, for instance, amid long gunfights with communist rebels. The story got into different types of healers, what type of potions they had. There was even a recipe for a love potion if you felt like doing one at home. This was, I'm not sure what the Filipino word is, but he's like a bone setter. And through the years of bone setting, his fingers sort of, or that, at least that's what he says, his fingers started being corrupted. Another story I love, and this is again how you can do a story that deals with commerce. This was the pearl farmers done for Julmer. Julmer is probably one of the largest pearl manufacturers in the Philippines. They invited us to come to their pearl farm, which is an island. This was done by Paco Guerrero, one of the founders of Fotomoto. He stayed in the pearl farm for like 10 days and got to live with the divers, with the cultivators. And again, it could easily have been a story about manufacturing pearls, which is just easy. But Christine had a way of telling the story about how these people almost cultivated these pearls, almost babied them in a way. This is the opening spread. Again, my love for movies makes it feel like a very cinematic kind of opening. I love this image that Paco did of one of the pearl farmers. It had this kind of nice pirate feel to it, and we played around with the idea of the pearls. The opening line of the article was, "In the summer, in the dead of night, in a house on an island so far south and so tenuously tethered to our archipelago that it feels like it may drift away at any time, a marine biologist is awake." And it talks about the dedication, the passion they had for cultivating these pearls. You had to stay up all night testing the waters, testing the temperature, making sure that they would call them babies, make sure the babies were growing well. Another quote from the article, "Babies, you will hear workers refer to the oysters again and again. If it doesn't seem creepy at all to them, it's because everyone has completely bought into this mindset." Another thing I like about magazine storytelling or book storytelling is these days, most storytelling is done through Instagram or YouTube, and you can scratch the surface. When you tell a long-form story, you get the story within the story. You get little tidbits that you would only get if you spent time in this region, which is what you get when you travel. This was one story I love about the island, where the workers all lived in different stations. Station 1, Station 2, Station 3. The guys of Station 5 were the most pogi. They were the best-looking guys. And they were known for whenever they went to work, they would cover their faces because they didn't want to get their skin damaged. So every time you saw a guy with their face covered, it was like, Station 5 yan. I'm going to go through several articles that I love. Another one I love was Wang Od Loves Coco Martin. It was a story about how one of our writers, who was an intern, wanted to do a story about the famous Mababatok tattoo artist Wang Od, made the whole pilgrimage there. And really, the conversation centered around Coco Martin. Wang Od was totally in love with Coco Martin, wanted to know who he was dating, who he was, what was happening, and basically gossip from the Philippines. And it was a wonderful sort of idea. I brought it up in my last talk. We got a lot of hate mail saying, why are you going to dress up a national treasure in a Coco Martin t-shirt? And our argument was, we didn't tell her to dress up anyway. That's what she was wearing. We're not going to put her in a costume or anything. That's what she wears every day, and that's what we try to do. So basically, overall is, again, I just want to reiterate the idea of storytelling. That's what I love. That's what I get to do and what I'm lucky enough to do. I get to get all these photos, these wonderful stories, and I lay it out the way I think the movie should be done. This was about one of the oldest pandesal bakeries in Manila, shot by Sunny Thakur. We also like to play around in grid with assigning photographers who may not fit the bill. This was about, again, spiritual concoctions, different types of healing potions. We got a really at that time, very young artist named Crew Camara, who has since blown up to be a very popular photographer. At that time, she would do these articles for us, and she had a really wonderful way of gelling the colors and stuff, and took a very mundane topic in terms of, plants and potions, and was able to give it sort of this wonderful feel to it. Another one we did using a lot of Neal's photos. This was an article written at the time by the wonderful late Clinton Palanca. It was for our food issue, and we talked about basically the evolution of Philippine cuisine, highlighting a lot of the new up-and-coming guys like Bruce Ricketts and Chele of Gallery. An article on Escuela Taller. Escuela Taller, I don't know if you... one of the things I love, again, is stories of the Philippines that you've never heard of. Escuela Taller is a school that gets street children and teaches them art restoration. And all together, they restore old churches and old buildings. This was shot by Jerick Cruz, one of the guys we go to all the time. Just a wonderful... Jerick has an ability to get a very mundane subject, like gloves on a workbench, and he gives it almost, because of the topic of the restoration, gives it almost this Renaissance feel to it. So that's it. I mean, again, I just wanted to share why I love magazines, why I enjoy doing it, and I feel super lucky to have had Grid and the opportunity to work with wonderful photographers, writers, designers. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful presentation, Sir Nachi. It's good to know how important a good story is in commercializing photography and how powerful photography can be in evoking an experience. Let's now turn our attention to the specialized industry of contemporary art photo books in the context of international representation. Let's welcome Mr. Hikari Machiguchi, who comes from Tokyo, Japan, with interpreter Keiko Ozaeta.
皆さんこんにちは。
Good evening.
日本の東京から来た、町口ひかりです。
I'm from Tokyo, Japan. My name is Hikari Machiguchi.
僕は本のデザイナーをやってます。
I'm a designer for books.
ここにも僕の作ったデザインした本があって、
And you can see some of my books here.
でデザインした本を、パブリッシュ出版もしています。
I'm also not just a designer, but a publisher as well.
アートブックの中でも特に写真集に力を入れて出
And
版してます。
particularly, I place my focus on photo books.
で僕がその写真集に取りつかれたというか好きになってしまったっていうのは、僕のおじいさんが、小学校の図書室の、壊れた本を修復するっていう仕事をしてました。
Why did I get into this? I grew up with a grandfather who worked in the library of an elementary school, amending books, old books.
それで僕のお父さんとお兄さんも、その影響で本のデザイナーをやってます。
And because of those, the influences, my father and my brother is also a book designer.
その影響で、僕の家には子供の生まれた時から写真集がたくさんあったんですね。
So growing up, I was surrounded by photo books.
だから子供が、絵本で楽しむように僕は子供の頃からずっと写真集を見て楽しんで生きてきました。
Perhaps most kids grow up reading storybooks, but for me, they were photo books.
なので必然的に、本のデザイナーになろうと決めてここまでやってきました。
So naturally, my path was to become a photo book designer, and that this is where I am today.
なので今日はこのスライドっていうのは特にリンクして説明することはないんですけど、僕が普段に行ってる2008年から行ってる、フランスのパリで行われているパリフォトっていうフェアがあるんですけど、
This, what you see behind me, it isn't linked to what I'm talking about now, but it is. There are photos of where I have been participating since year 2008, yearly, in France, in Paris, called the Paris Photo.
その、展示してる風景とか、あとは普段僕が、写真集を作っている、アトリエの写真とか、印刷所の写真とか、なんかそういうのを適当にというか入れてますんで。
So this is just a compilation or consolidation of some of the exhibitions that I have participated in, some of my photo books of the atelier, and some printings. So it's you can see the compilation here behind me.
何かこの後ろの写真について質問がある場合は後ほど言ってください。
And if you have any questions on what you are seeing behind me, please feel free to ask later on.
で僕はフィリピンに来たのは今回2度目なんですけども、
This is the second time I've been to the Philippines.
最初に来たのは2010年
The first time I came was in year 2010.
で僕は本が好きなもんで写真集が好きなもんですから、2010年にフィリピンのマニラで写真集を買うために本屋さんを探しまくったんです。
Because I love photo books so much, when I came to the Philippines in 2010, I went around bookstores in Manila to look for photo books.
ただ残念ながらそこでは出会うことができなかったんですよ。
Unfortunately, I was not able to find any.
それで今年ここに呼んでいただいてた時にすごい感動したことがありまして。
So this year, when I was coming to this art fair, there was something that really sparked me.
このフォトモトっていうことで今年からこのアートフェアフィリピンにフォトモトが参加するということで写真を多く見ることができたっていう。
I found out starting this year, Fotomoto was going to partner here in the art fair, so I knew I'd be able to see a lot of photos here.
そしてこのフォトモトが発行している写真集、
And this is the photo book published by Fotomoto.
これはまさに僕が探し求めていた 写真集。
So this is exactly what I was looking for.
なぜかというと、フィリピンの写真家の写真をこんなにまとめて発行している本はないと思うんですよね。
I believe why is it that I'm looking for a book like this? I believe there is no other book like this where it represents the photographers, the Filipino photographers.
雑誌の編集者だったりとかデザイナーとか出版社パブリッシャーっていうのは常にやっぱり写真を探していると思うんですよ。
I think magazine publishers and designers are always looking for photographers.
例えば日本の雑誌とか広告の仕事でフィリピンで撮影をするときに現地の写真家を使いたいって思ったときに探すものがなかったんですよね。
For example, the magazine publishers in Japan, if they wanted to do a feature in the Philippines, they had no way of looking for local photographers.
もちろんインスタグラムとかその画面で見ることはできるんですけども、
Of course, there are ways using social media like Instagram to find these photographers.
ちゃんとこのフォトモトっていう組織が認めた写真家であり、こうやってちゃんと本になってるってことが僕らにとってはすごく信憑性があってすごく信頼できます。
And I think this is really important. Why? Because when Fotomoto curates the photographs and the photographers, and it is in a physical book, it does give credibility.
でこの本は本当に優れていて、最後にちゃんと名前カメラマンの写真家の名前がちゃんと記載されてる。
And I especially appreciate that all the names of the photographers are listed.
これでこの写真を見た後にこの人にお仕事をお願いしたいなっていう時にすぐ探せるようになってる。
And if I like a certain photograph in the book, I'm able to identify the photographer and to be able to get connected.
これは本当に僕みたいなこの仕事をしている人間がこういうフィリピンっていう外国に来た時に一番出会いたい写真集だなっていうふうに思ってます。
For someone like me, going global, looking for photographers, this would be the book that I would be looking for.
それで僕が出版している写真集っていうのも少し似ていることをやっていまして、
And these are some of the books that I have published, and I think there are some similarities.
ここにこういうふうにちょっと薄くて軽い写真集がたくさんあるんですけども、
This is, there are quite a number of, these are quite thin and light.
これ後で置いときますんでどっか手に持ってぜひ見ていただきたいんです
Booklets,
け
if
ど、
you can later on, please come up and take a look.
これ主に日本の新人っていうか若手写真家と少し中堅どころっていうところの世代の人たちを、こういう形にしてさっきのパリフォトっていうふうに持っていく、つまり日本の写真家っていうのを世界に広めていくっていう活動をしてるんですよね。
So these booklets are perhaps some new upcoming photographers to maybe some are in the mid-range established, but it does help these photographers get known outside of Japan, and by bringing these booklets to Paris Photo, it does give them an opportunity to get noticed outside of Japan.
その時にこれぐらい薄くて軽いものっていうのはすごく送りやすい。
And when it is thin and light as this, it makes it easier to send and to ship.
手渡してもそんなに迷惑にもならないようなものなんで、
And I think when it is given to a particular person, it does not also burden them with something so heavy.
で内容も32ページになっていて、全てのプロジェクトをこの一冊で見せる作るにはしてないんです。
So these are limited to max 32 pages. It does not necessarily mean that their entire portfolio is consolidated in this one booklet.
映画でいうとこれは予告編みたいな感じです。
Like, for example, if you think of a movie, this would be the trailer or the preview.
でこれに手を取った、そういうデザイナーとかギャラリストたちがもっとこの写真を見たいって思わせるのがこれのミソなんですよね。
So the purpose of this booklet is that when they pick it up, they see it as, well, it tickles them and it wants it gives them an opportunity to think that they want to meet the photographer and would like to get to know their projects more.
でここにプロフィールとか作家の連絡先とか、入ってるので、実際そういう連絡が来たことも何度かあるんですよね。
And the information about the photographer is listed in the back. For example, their profile, their contact number, their details are in the back. So it gives them accessibility to the photographers.
っていうのがこのシリーズなんですけどね。あとこれいこうかな。
So I want to tell you a story about this one here.
アートフェア、普段僕は写真専門のフェアにはよくもう15、16年出てるんですけど、アートフェアにはということで、ちょっとアート作品としての本。
I attend a lot of photography fairs, but not so often art fairs. So I selected something I feel is an art piece.
それをなんかどういうふうに作っていくっていう考え方みたいなのをちょっと今実演でやってみたいと思います。
So I would like to show you how this is a piece of art.
これはアーコヤっていう寺山修司っていう日本の作家の小説なんです。
This is actually a literature from a famous writer. Shuji Terayama.
でその小説の内容っていうのはボクシングの内容なんです。
So the story of this literature is about boxing.
でこの小説が発行されたのは1966年。
So this book was published in 1966.
その頃のプロボクシングの世界戦のラウンド数っていうのは15ラウンドあった。
So back in 1966, when they had the boxing games, internationally they had 15 rounds.
今は12ラウンドなんですけど。
Right now it's 12 rounds.
だからこの小説っていうのは15章から成り立ってる。
So this literature is comprised of 15 chapters.
それほどにもこのボクシングにすごく力を入れた小説になっていまして。
So that's how much the author really connected to the story of boxing.
でこの小説の舞台っていうのは、東京の新宿です。
So the story takes stage in Shinjuku, Tokyo.
それでもう一つこの森山大道っていう日本の写真家がいるんですけど、
So there is another photographer named Daido Moriyama.
その大道森山さんっていうのはこの寺山修司のことをすごく尊敬してるんです。
So this photographer has a huge respect for the writer.
なのでこのアーコーヤっていう小説と森山大道が撮った同じ1966年の新宿の写真っていうのを一緒にしてるんです。
With that, the photographer took photos also in 1966 of Shinjuku, Tokyo. So they were able to put together the story that was written in 1966 and photographs that were also taken in 1966 in Shinjuku, Tokyo.
なのでこの本の作りもすごくボクシングに。
So because of that, the way this book is made or this art piece is made is really very much based on boxing.
後でぜひ手に取って見ていただきたいんです。
I would love for you to come and take a look at this later on.
こういう本です。
So this is how the book looks.
まずこのケース。
So I'd like to tell you a little bit about this case.
近くで見てもらうと分かると思うんですけど、
If you come up closer, you'll be able to tell.
ボクシングのヴィンテージ、バンテージ。
So this is what the boxers used as a bandage inside their boxing gloves.
と同じ素材で作
So
ってま
it's
す。
the exact same material here.
で次に2冊入ってます。
So inside there are 2 books.
この赤コーナーが
There's the red corner.
寺山修司です。
So this is his writing, the book.
でこの青コーナーが
And then we have the
Moriyama
blue
Daido.
corner, and this is the photographer's work.
でこの赤コーナーの赤いこの、表紙
This cover in the red corner,
これは本当のプロ用のボクシンググローブの革を使ってます。
it is actually the exact same material that they use for the boxing gloves, used in the book cover.
もちろん同じくこの青い方も公式のボクシンググローブの革を使ってます。
And also similar to the red, it's also for the blue book as well. It is the exact same material that they use for the boxing gloves.
ただボクシンググローブをこういう本の素材として使うのはすごく難しい。
Just to let you know, it is not so easy to use this boxing glove material for a book cover.
その革を、本に使えるようになめすっていうか、
So
鳴らす
So to be able to use it as a book cover, it was something that took some work to be able to come up with this.
っていうのをちょっと僕はこれでお願いしに行ったりとかして作れました。
And I put in effort, and I had to talk to several people in order to make this happen.
なので残念ですけどこれは世界に50冊しか作れませんでした。
There are only 50 pieces of this that I could come up with.
中身、写真こっちは森山大道ですね。
So these are the photographs inside.
でこの森山大道の写真の方にはこの寺山修司さんの短歌が入ってるんです。
And in the photographer's blue book, it has the author's poem that is written on the first page of each chapter. これ15章あるんでしたっけ？
15章ある。でこの短歌のところは、日本の自慢の和紙、
And
手すきの和紙っていうんですけど、
in the beginning of each chapter, a Japanese paper called washi is used for the first page of each chapter.
っていうのが入ってるんで、ぜひ後で手に取って見ていただきた
So
いと思います。
later, if you'd like to come up and also feel the texture, please experience that as well.
そうこっちは小説になってます。
And this is the writer's book.
それで最後になりますけど、
And lastly,
この赤いコーナーとの寺山修司と
so we have the writer and we have also the photographer.
戦わせるっていう意味で、
And the story is that they are going to fight against each other as a boxer. And that is the beginning, the start of the game.
ちなみにこの鉄はゴングと同じ素材を使ってま
So
す。
this material is the exact same material they use for the gong.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much.